You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi. Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Kathy Biasi, and I'm an holistic nutritionist, and I am a professional cancer coach. On today's show, we are talking about mindset and resiliency with my guest, Scott Hanley. Scott is working to help people overcome obstacles, reframe their thinking, and bounce back stronger physically, mentally, and emotionally. Scott is a remarkable advocate for resilience, mindset, and functional health, an advocacy grounded in a powerful story of personal growth and change. Diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2017, Scott faced debilitating symptoms including muscle rigidity, tremors, and severe sleep disturbances. Refusing to accept a progressive decline, he took an unconventional approach combining high-intensity physical and cognitive exercises to train his brain and reclaim control. Through CrossFit, Scott found a program that he paired physical intensity with cognitive challenge, allowing him to regain 95% of his function, an outcome that continues to astonish his neurologists. His journey reflects a commitment to thrive despite adversity, using resilience and innovation. Scott's experience as a former British Army officer further strengthens his message of mental toughness and discipline. Bringing this expertise into the corporate arena, he now works with business leaders to cultivate habits that support both physical and mental performance. Scott emphasizes mindset, functional fitness, and sustainable wellness as essential strategies to thrive in high-stress environments. He works directly with these executives and teams, sharing insights from his own journey and teaching resilience-based techniques that empower them to lead with energy, focus, and a renewed commitment to health. Whether you're navigating a health challenge, working towards a goal, or just trying to stay grounded in a chaotic world, this conversation is packed with insights that can help you build a more resilient and empowered mindset. Obviously, we talk about how Scott reversed his symptoms of Parkinson's disease. This opened the door for all that he's doing now. His key pillars of mindset and resiliency, and how his story really transcends so many areas of life. Do stay tuned. We will be back in just a few minutes to speak with Scott Hanley. You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. Please follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Scott, welcome to the show.
Kathy, thank you. Lovely to be here. Lovely to meet you and your listeners.
Well, we got a bit of an insight from the introduction in your bio. You represent a space in health that is needing to be talked about more. It's the self-care, the taking health into your own hands to some degree, and the evolution of you, Scott, is a great story that can be applied to many different aspects of health. So I think, we did listen to the bio, but I think it bears great, it's good for us to get your voice on your transformation, on your story. So if you could give us that in your own words, I think it'd be a great way to start the show off.
Okay, thanks for that lovely introduction. Goodness, where to begin? So December 2017, so what's that, nearly 7.5 years ago, having had some pretty funky symptoms with my body, shakes and tremors and other bits and pieces, I was formally diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. I was age 51 at the time, which would be youngish, but there's plenty younger. I think the average age is in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So on actual receipt of the formal diagnosis, it's an odd thing maybe to say, but I wasn't that surprised because the whole process of seeing my family doctor, my GP, seeing a neurologist, getting the brain scan and the results being delivered, that was, I don't know, something like 4 or 5 months. Mm-hmm. And my symptoms had increased a wee bit over that period. So I think, with Google and the amount of knowledge that's available to us, I kind of knew it was going to be Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. So whenever I got the official diagnosis, I wasn't shocked. Over the next 2, 3, 4 years, my symptoms deteriorated. Life was increasingly becoming pretty intolerable. And Parkinson's is, by conventional medicine, is considered to be an incurable degenerative neurological disease, which they don't really know how it happens, why it happens. Is it genetic? Is it not? And there's no real effective treatment apart from some temporary things that they can do to slow down, put the brakes on the inevitable decline. So things were getting pretty bad in life, and I was still only at stage 2, 5 being terminal. So in relative terms, I was living a normal life. I was able to conceal and predict my symptoms for the most part, not always. But I don't know why it took me so long. But at that point, I just said, there must be something I can do, regardless of what neurology tells me, regardless of what those 6 monthly checkups with my consultant say. I just believed that there must be something that you could do. If I could, just before I tell you about the next 3 years after that, if I could maybe just go back to on diagnosis. The one thing that I definitely did do at a conscious level in the moment, maybe not the exact moment, but over the next couple of weeks, I definitely said to myself, you are not going to let this disease define or dictate you, or dictate your life, or define who you are. And that was very, very intentional mental choice that I made. And that didn't waver. And it continues not to waver some 7.5 years in. But the actual dealing with the physical symptoms, not the mental and the emotional aspect of it, it took me probably about 3 to 4 years to actually act on it. And I've often been asked, why did it take you so long? I mean, well, first of all, everybody that you spoke to, or pretty much everybody, or any research you did, getting to the 97th page on Google, basically said there's not much can be done. I now know that not to be the case, but at the time, that's what they said. But it took me 3 to 4 years. And I think looking back and having talked to a lot of people about this, is I probably needed to get to a certain level of despair, disagreement, discomfort. I don't know what the word is exactly, before I acted on it. And I just took all the conventional medical advice and all the research, and I basically cleared the table. And with a blank sheet of paper, born from a seed that I read in one media article that I unfortunately couldn't find a couple of years later was, Parkinson's disease is where part of my brain called the substantia nigra is not effective as it should be, as God intended it to be. So on a scan, my substantia nigra would look very different to yours, Kathy.
Okay.
So that part of the brain transmits neurological commands, neuro commands throughout the body, which in turn stimulates each and every body part that's moving. That's the command signal for it to move. So my logic was, if I want to get bigger biceps, I know what I would do in the gym. My daughter's running a marathon in 2 weeks. She knows what's training she needs to do for it. If I want bigger pec muscles, I do bench press. And I had this really simple, totally unscientific thought, well, what about I just exercise and strengthen the part of my body that is weak, that is creating Parkinson's disease symptoms? It really was as simple as that. Mm-hmm. Now, I suppose the big thing was, there was nobody there to tell me or to guide me. So I just thought, right, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to exercise as hard as I can, and as hard as I can would be very different to, listener number 1 on this and listener number 10. So I did the intensity that I was capable of doing. But rather than just run or go on a cross trainer or a spin bike where you'd build up a sweat and you burn some calories, which is good. But I wanted to do exercise that really challenged my cognition. So the playground version of that is I wanted my brain to be hurting and screaming as much as my cardio and respiratory system. So I just really wanted to exhaust my brain more so than my other aspects of conventional fitness. So I started doing that. I should say this was at the start of the first lockdown. So we then had, an 18-month period of, we all remember what happened during lockdowns, and Canada doubtless did something different to Northern Ireland. Mm-hmm. But I just worked at that. I do think it's really important to go back to, my day one mindset where I said, this ain't going to beat me. I'm not going to be beaten by it. Now, I didn't expect my symptoms to disappear, but with a high degree of intent and purpose, I set about this exercise regime where I was working really hard while my brain was thinking. So a boxing bag went up with headphones in, so I was listening to commands.
Okay, I was going to ask you how you had your brain working as well. So you said more complicated exercises. Is that sort of?
Yeah. So I suppose complicated is a good summary for it, but it's exercises that I couldn't do without thinking. If I go for riding a bike, Kathy, if you and I go for a bike ride, we don't have to think about it. Mm-hmm. Even if we go up a hill and we're out of breath, we don't have to think about it. Mm-hmm. Our legs go round and they might get a bit sore, but you don't have to think about it. So I had to get creative with the cognitively intense aspect of the training. So I started with boxing. So if you think you're listening to instructions, jab, uppercut, cross, and by the way, I hadn't boxed before. So, it wasn't like this was all new to me. I had a couple of dumbbells, kettlebells in the back of the garage, and I listened to instructions off YouTube and various apps. So I was doing things that I had never previously done. So yes, my body was getting stronger and I was getting fitter and I was losing weight, which of course is good for everybody. And I wasn't in great shape at that point, to be honest. But the big thing that I focused on was do stuff that you don't know how to do. So you have to think about it.
To be honest, with all the guests I've had in my shows, I have never thought about the cognitive aspect of exercise in this health space in order to heal, in order to strengthen. It's a huge point that you bring about. You're not sitting and doing puzzles. You're actually exercising and doing intricate pieces of body work, you're to coordinate your coordination basically is what you're talking about here with the boxing. Your coordination and keying in on that is really a big piece of cognition. And it, until you just said that, I didn't really ever put that together. I mean, not that I'm mindless with when it comes to exercise, but that's brilliant. That's a brilliant piece that people we need to pick up on here for sure.
Okay. Thank you for saying about doing a puzzle. So the conventional, you've had your diagnosis, here's the support that they give you. And one of the pieces of advice is learn something new or do something that challenges your brain, because it's a part of my brain that's weak and malfunctioning. Mm-hmm. So they sort of said, learn a musical instrument. You think if I play the flute or learn to play the violin, I'm having to move and use coordination, balance, and dexterity. So I suppose maybe that gave me a seed of thought. I haven't considered that until this moment when you've just made your last comment, Kathy. So thank you for that. So yes, you're right to a point, but you said about the boxing and balance and coordination. That was a byproduct. That wasn't the intention. And what I mean by that was, yes, of course, it's going to improve that. But my sole purpose and goal for doing this was I wanted to really, really put the part of my brain that's really important for cognition and sending the signals to all my body parts whilst I'm doing that. I wanted that to be under as much pressure as I could put and intensity as I possibly could. Now, the byproduct of that is what you've just said. It's the coordination and the balance, which, by the way, as we get older, we fall down, we break hips. So if you've got better balance, coordination and core, I mean, leaving the neurological side out of it, I mean, that's win-win. We all should be doing this. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, thanks for doing that. I haven't really considered it the way you've just done it, the way you've just explained it.
Well, we were talking about off air, talking about these things not only enlightens people who are listening, but it also helps us to center, I think, just what our accomplishments have been. I think you speaking about the trials that you've been through are, it reiterates to yourself, it iterates to me, an aspect of health that maybe isn't fixated upon as much as it should be. Like, I have not heard of here's a strategy for Parkinson's. Exercise your brain in the midst of the physical piece. The mental, I mean, we separate them, I think, but bringing them together in the physical space, because we're told a lot about how much exercising is important, but maybe this piece of why exercise is important isn't actually spoken about. And I think it's an important thing for people to understand. Can you apply this to all areas of health, do you think?
Give me an example and I'll try and answer it more accurately.
Well, one of the things that has stood out in the conversation is the part that you talked about. It took you a while to deal with your diagnosis. So that is a part of mindset that we're going to be talking about in the second part of the show. But, I've had my own health struggles as well. And if you could, I don't know if you can put it into words, but it's almost like a dealing with a grief, the steps to dealing with grief, the steps to, how did going through these steps, maybe, fear, denial, acceptance, and then you're acting upon it. Do you think that your prior history made you stronger to be able to go through these steps? Or do you think this is something that if it's talked about more, people can accept these steps and take a better hold of their own health process?
Oh, great question. And the answer to, is it A or B? It's both. So let me explain what I mean by that. So is my previous life, I was a British Army officer. And part of training, I dare say it's the same in the Canadian forces and across the world. There's a there's something known as mission analysis. I won't go into the details of it. We don't have time today, I don't believe. But basically, it's a really, really rigid, structured process where you are presented with a difficult situation that you need to deal with. But it teaches you how to go through all the different options and come to the best plan possible, having considered as many factors as is possible. And here's the key bit. You do it without emotion. So it's called mission analysis. So I definitely know, looking back, that my military service and my training as at Sandhurst, which is the UK version of the British version of West Point, that was really a very significant part. Now, a lot of people are going to hear that and go, yeah, I didn't go to West Point. I didn't go to Sandhurst. That was just a small part of my journey, but it was a big part of my journey. Now, to go on to your second question, and I think this is something that I've learned and I've analyzed why I've achieved what I've achieved is, why this so long and how do you compress that and what can other people do if I'm getting your question, if I'm interpreting it correctly. Yeah. So first of all, you need to be curious. You need to have a desire or curiosity to improve something. Now, whether that's your type 2 diabetes, whether that is Parkinson's disease, whether it is other disabilities caused by trauma or mental trauma, whatever it is, you need to have a curiosity. And what I mean by that is a desire to improve it. And if you've got that, then I would encourage people, this is what I did, is to start to acquire knowledge on the subject, educate yourself on the subject. And there's so much stuff available to people. Yeah, you can't afford maybe a course at $1,200, but the amount of podcasts, and I know there's a lot of charlatans out there, and there's so much it's hard to get through the mire and find the diamonds, but they are out there. So educate yourself. And whenever you start that process, Kathy, there's going to be a massive gap. So there's maybe going to be like a chasm of knowing how to get from A to B. But if you stay curious and you develop your knowledge, that chasm narrows and it'll get to a much more manageable gap. And at that point, and I think only at that point, certainly for me, for Scott Hanley, it was at that point I felt that I had the confidence to do the right thing and I knew what the plan was and I started doing the plan. And I think that's why it took me 2 or 3 years, because I was always curious. I was never depressed or angry or, I had that mental flag in the ground going, nah, we're not letting this beat us or define us. But yeah, it just took me this few years. It's a bit like, I don't know, if you've ever put on weight, you put on a couple of pounds or a couple of kilograms and you think, oh, sure, I can shift that. And then another 6 months and you've got another 6 or 7 pounds, another kilogram on. And then all of a sudden you go, holy smoke, I'm up 30 pounds here. But we didn't act on the first kilogram, the first 6 pounds. So why do humans do that, do you think?
Well, I think for everybody, and depending upon their diagnosis, and we're talking, we're moving out beyond Parkinson's, there's denial with a lot of, with diagnosis, depending on what you're, so I think, the mindset piece, and we'll elaborate on this more the second half. I think it takes people some time to get to the space where they can maybe step back a bit and look at their diagnosis and have an action plan. I think there are many, many reasons why people react differently. I think, depending upon the diagnosis, number one, depending upon outlook, depending how it's been presented to you, depending upon, if you've got a doctor with a great bedside manner that says, okay, this is what we're finding, and this is how we can work with this diagnosis, and someone that gives you more of a positive upbeat, it kind of sets you on one path. And it's very personal too. People take things in a different way when they're given health information. And I think it does take some time to let things, it can be very shocking, a diagnosis. And sometimes you just need to work with it. And you just need to take that time. And then when it comes to that part you're talking about, how more to the weight gain and that sort of area that you were talking about, I think ignoring symptoms and ignoring pieces of health is human nature until we hit a wall and have to deal with it. I just think a lot of people are like that, busy. And as you have shown here quite readily, it is not something easy to do. I mean, you've got to prepare yourself and you've got to have a plan, and that takes you stopping and thinking. And, until your back is against the wall, a lot of us don't do that. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with it. It is hard. Mm-hmm. It is hard. It is hard to shift weight. It is hard to do what I did. But how hard is it relative to getting type 2 diabetes and having a limb amputated? How hard is it to watch my body slowly crumble and not work? And how hard would it be if I didn't have control of my feet, my arms, my movement, my arms, my bladder, and then ultimately my ability to swallow and for my lungs to breathe? Mm-hmm. This is where Parkinson's does. Everything in our body needs movement. So yeah, it was hard, but maybe choose a different hard, because downstream it's going to be really hard. And let's get away from Parkinson's. That's going to be so true of chronic diseases and so many diseases. And in North America, the prevalence of chronic disease and the projected growth of that it's just frightening. Conventional medicine is making us live longer. So medicine and science, medical science, is making us live longer. But that's because of technology and pharma. But we're all going to be older, but chronically ill.
Well, what it comes down to is that we have to take more responsibility for our own health. And this is not a shot at the doctors, the healthcare profession. We need to take more responsibility, whether it's in a preventative space, whether it's a reaction to a diagnosis. I think once we understand that, this is our health and we've got a great deal of influence on it, at least our quality of life, I think the better off we'll be. I think, by you telling your story, I think with the, functional medicine and integrative medicine, I mean, you do have to weed through a lot of it for certain. But I think our understanding these days of how our body is so integrated with so many other aspects, I think the knowledge of that is at least allowing people to explore what they can do for their own health. And I think that's a very important thing that your story tells us, is to take hold of what you can take hold of. And why not try things? Why not, push the envelope or try something that no one's ever done? I don't think within, where we're speaking of today, that is something that is talked about enough. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes to continue our conversation. We're going to deal with some mindset things, and maybe Scott will be able to elucidate some of the steps that we can put into place so that we can develop a positive mindset when we're working with our health. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. Scott, when we're talking about building a fundamentally solid mindset, do we have to be militarily trained, or can you give us ways and means to begin the development of a mindset that will move us in a positive direction within trying to improve our health?
Military service. I'm glad you brought that up just before we took the break there. This is my story, and yeah, I happened to be in the army whenever I was 50 pounds lighter and had hair, but it's not relevant. So
it's all relevant to some degree.
Well, yeah, okay, but no, hopefully what we're going to come on to, people will see that this isn't just for people with really bad medical conditions who've got a history of being trained. Far from it. And I think we'll come on to that. And we'll make sure that we come on to that. This is absolutely for anyone at any stage, whether that's somebody who's dealing with a bereavement, whether it's somebody who's got mental health issues, maybe they've just, they just can't go on the train or go to the mall because of the noise and the people. Doesn't matter what you want to improve in life. I believe that it is achievable if you are curious. I would probably overuse that word. Let's go with if you have a degree of desire that you want to not be in that space. Now, obviously, a lot of people are in that space, say bereavement, trauma, mental, physical, emotional health, all that. So there's no shortage of people in a tricky space. So do you have the desire? Then if the answer is yes, even if it's just a little bit of yes, 2 minutes a week, then let's pick up with that and grab that. And then concurrently with, I touched on education, but a part that goes alongside it, probably concurrently, is somehow to shift your expectations. And that's going to come from a desire and a bit of knowledge. But you've got to change your expectations. And what I mean by that is, would you not agree, Kathy, that the news, the conventional media, people, everything that we consume on our phone 24/7, it's kind of all the bad news stories, isn't it? They expect you to get worse. And even if I can just revert back to Parkinson's for a minute, all the information I got was, this is going to happen, blah, blah, blah. So the expectation is that it is going to get worse. The expectation is that you're not going to get out of your depression. The expectation is that you're going to continue to feel isolated in the flat for a million different reasons. So if that's what society and what your normal is, and we're all a product of our environment, it's quite hard to break out of that. So I would ask people to consciously, first of all, be aware that that is a big issue with whatever you're trying to fix or whatever you're trying to improve. So you need to shift your expectation. So just be open to the idea, well, okay, so I heard this guy from Ireland and maybe I'm a wee bit inspired and I'm a wee bit curious. So just start off with changing your expectations. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. So you got to push back against everything that you're seeing, or 95% of what you're seeing and consuming, and believe that you can, and shift your expectations. Build then your knowledge on whatever it is. So let's get away from Parkinson's. So the individual, the college student who was locked up during COVID, didn't have the whole college experience and never really got out of that. And their formative years, their friendships are made on Snapchat and Instagram, not real people. And yeah, that's just an example. Just understand that not everybody's like that. Shift your expectation that it is possible that those people are also not enjoying their lives, and that you can change that. And then maybe the knowledge is whether it's YouTube or through a healthcare professional, is maybe the knowledge in this really super simple example is, okay, meditation, getting some vitamin D from the sunlight, maybe just being outside, even on a balcony, and pulling back the curtains or the drapes or whatever they're called in Canada, and exposing yourself to a bit of nature. And maybe it's just walking 100 meters. You've got to start, but you've got to have the knowledge. You don't have to, but it's much better if you have the knowledge, in my opinion, to know how to make those first steps. And then hopefully you'll see some improvement. It will not be quick. It will not be a straight line. But stay curious and try to hold on to those expectations that you've shifted. And just, sorry, go on.
No, when just in that one point there, when you were going through your transformation within your health issues,
Yeah.
did you change how you approach it? Was your approach continually adapting? We're talking about small steps here to improve health. Did you find that you were more of, okay, I got to get to the finish line. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to bite off these huge pieces. And then as you're going through things, and was there a lot of realization about yourself and your mindset and what works for you that you can tell us about? Because for someone who is inspired by you, they may think it's a lot to bite off. Or, what are the small things that you learned within your process?
Yeah, it's a big, deep, dark forest. And you're not going to run through it. And you're going to have to do that one step at a time, to use an overused metaphor. Mm-hmm. So if you can stay a bit positive and continue to do the reps, to do the work. And I don't mean twice a day, every day. I did it 5 days a week, and then the next week I did it 6, and then the following week I did it 3 or 4 times. It's not a straight line. So I think if you've shifted your expectations and you're open to the idea, you will see some small milestones. They won't jump out at you every day, all day, but with a degree of persistence, you will see some milestones achieved. You've got to be open to that because they're probably easy to miss. So what I mean by that is, sticking with the college student with anxiety and depression, maybe you made it down the street a bit further. Maybe you did an extra couple of blocks. For me, I saw a bit of weight drop off, which was good. Wasn't overly relevant to my end goal, but that was good. Mm-hmm. I then I didn't spot it in the moment, but just looked back going, after a couple of weeks, goodness, I can put a key in the lock single-handedly, first time. I've not done that in 5 years. But it wasn't like a wowee, yippee moment whenever I did it. So I sort of saw it in retrospect a few weeks later, or maybe whenever I'd done it 3 or 4 times. So there's always going to be signposts that will say you're moving in the right direction. But it does require quite a bit of patience, Kathy, in my experience.
With your experience and the success you've had in, self-treatment, how have you used this and your story to help other people?
Nearly by accident, I was profiled on a piece of media by a US organization called CrossFit, which was, it really happened by accident. But that's in the rearview mirrors. So there was something that went out, and certain things that were going out in socials were getting 5 to 6 million views. And I made a conscious decision that I would make myself available. Now, that initial media was very Parkinson specific. But I just decided to make myself available. So I was contacted a lot by people from all over the world. And I spoke to an awful lot of them. I interacted with them. Some of them were local to in Ireland. The majority were on phone, on Zoom, all the usual ways you can communicate. And it became pretty obvious that there's a lot of people out there that were searching for what I discovered. So I suppose I unofficially mentored or engaged with people who were very appreciative of it. And I also then found out other people that had done the same as me. I was not the first. I was not on my own. So that was a bit of validation for me that I'm not some one-off freak. So that's good. And hopefully that's good for people listening. Yale Medicine, so the medical school at Yale University in the US, did a piece of work on a trial about 12 months after my story broke, who confirmed that what I'd done, the high intensity interval training, with the degree of cognition, they did it with a group of Parkinson's patients who reversed their symptoms. So that then inspired more people. And I suppose it validated. I had a bit of imposter syndrome going on, Kathy. So I kept on doing more. Anyway, it kept on finding me, to use a bit of a cheesy term. And I decided last autumn, I was in Indonesia. I was very fortunate to have a lengthy holiday and a lot of thinking time then to get more involved in this space professionally, and very much not Parkinson specific. Mm-hmm. Sure, they're going to come along and appear, and I continue to get messages from new people, and I interact with that. But it's more about the whole get the growth mindset going, understand the importance of the effect of expectations, how to build a habit, how to get from curiosity to knowledge to expectation to doing the reps to getting outcomes that take you to the place that you want to be. And an awful lot of that is around the mindset aspect of it, which is a massively overused word. Sometimes I cringe when the context with which I hear it said. But yeah, I've decided to do that. Now, it's not my day job at the minute, but it's now going to be an increasingly much bigger part of my life. Talking about it finds you then in December. Mm-hmm. So that's when December 24. I had a few conversations with an individual. I'm co-authoring a book called Start Over, which is basically profiling people that have made remarkable comebacks, sensational comebacks. I've posted a lot of adversity. Some of that is military, some of it is childhood abuse, some of it's all sorts from all over the world. This is not a UK and Ireland thing, from all over the world. And yeah, so I've ended up co-authoring, and I'm one of the chapters in a future volume, and that's called Start Over. So yeah, it all just kept on finding me, and I've got engaged with it, and I'm kind of just at the pivot point now. Mm-hmm. Where, yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot more of that. And that's going to be done at corporate level, whether that be corporate entities, whether it be community, church, sports groups, teams, whether it's individuals.
Well, I mean, what you've done, what you've accomplished, and I guess in a roundabout way, I've been trying to pull this out. It transcends your story. It transcends health to some degree, health with illness, I guess I shouldn't say health, illness, because you have established that you've built an arena for yourself, and it's not just the Parkinson's arena, it's the mindset arena. More than in anything else, you've established that you can do so much when you have the proper mindset. And I think, we have on the Health Hub, we have scientists, we have experts in many fields, and that's, part of what our show is. But a lot of us come to the health space because of our own personal stories. And sometimes that is the most powerful medicine for people that are listening. And I think that that is exactly what you bring to the table. So when you speak about having imposter syndrome, I beg to differ. I think that you are the truest form of medicine and the truest form of health that can be, that you can touch people with, and it is not investigated and not appreciated enough.
Oh, Kathy, I've got goosebumps and potentially could get emotional there. Thank you so much. That's very kind. I'm glad that that's how you see it, because that's how it is intended. And I hope that, some of your listeners feel the same and can take something away from this.
I'm absolutely sure that they will. Now, if there's a place that they can reach out to you, find out more about your work, follow your wonderful story, where can we direct them to?
Okay, thank you for that. As I just said, I'm literally just hitting the pivot point where all the buttons are about to push. So your best bet is to start off on a very new business Instagram page. So my brand is Thrive Happens. So regardless of whatever, what is happening, Thrive can happen. Mm-hmm. So thrivehappens.com will be the website, should go live hopefully by the time this is published. And then the Instagram will be my main social. And I've just switched from my personal account to a business account, and it is Thrive_happens. On those, there will be link trees. You'll be able to see my story. You'll get all the links to all the other media. There's a 20-minute short documentary parked on YouTube. And if you want to know more about the actual details of the story and the flash to bang, it's going to be easily available. Or also, if you Google Scott Hanley, Parkinson's or Belfast, you'll get pages of it. But yeah, go there and you'll find my link tree, and everything that's currently out there about me, you'll find it there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it's touched people, and I appreciate you taking your time to do so.
You're very kind. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Everybody, we will talk to you next week on The Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi, here on Radio Maria Canada.